By my count, I see 82 disciplinary tickets, 2 of them within the last year. I see 15 lawsuits that he has filed. And I've also noted that at the time of this murder, he had, and Chairperson Palmieri pointed this out, he had already had a prior weapon conviction, already been sentenced to prison, already been on probation. So he basically came home as a young man knowing, what should I not do of all the dumb, stupid, horrible criminal things to do, but pick up a gun?
We are about to watch the parole hearing of a man in 2001 after just getting released from prison for carrying a firearm, killed someone who he thought had robbed him. Now, he's only eligible for parole because of Act 23169, which passed unceremoniously. I mean, if you Google this act, nothing will come up. I could not find a single news article. And what this act did is that it allows anyone under the age of 21 to become parole eligible, and in some cases even have their record automatically expunged. I mean, we've seen under 18, but now under 21, that's something incredible in my opinion. Now, his opening remarks goes on and on and on and on until the board actually cuts him off at the 26-minute mark and says, "Hey, you know, like you've been going on a long time. You got to cut it out." I left it in there because I think it is necessary to really get an understanding of how his mind works and how and he views himself in this entire situation. But if you do want to fast forward to the 26-minute mark, go ahead. And with that, let's jump in.
Morning, my name is Parole Officer Wangersman. Today is Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, and this is the Public Act 23169 hearing, the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. For the record, Timothy Townsend, the state of Connecticut, passed and made effective October 1st, 2023, the Public Act 23169. It's an act concerning parole eligibility for an individual serving a lengthy sentence for a crime committed before the individual reaches the age of 21 and criminal history records erasure. You fall under this act, and this means that you are under the age of 21 and that the board shall give great weight to the diminished culpabilities of juveniles as compared to adults, the hallmark features of youth, and any subsequent growth and maturity that you've displayed while we were reviewing your suitability today. The following board members are present this morning and by stating their names on the record, certify they have reviewed all statutorily required documents and available pertinent information.
Nancy Turner, good morning.
Good morning, Deborah Smith Palmieri.
Good morning, panel member Rodriguez.
Also present in attendance this morning, we have Public Defender Hope Estrella. Attorney Estrella, can you please state your name, juris number, and business address for the record?
Yes, my name is Hope Estrella. I work at the Waterbury Public Defender's Office, the LSU unit, and my juris number is 443957.
Thank you very much. And also present today, we have State's Attorney John Doyle. Attorney Doyle, do you mind also please stating your name, juris number, and business address for the record?
Good morning to the board. John Doyle, juris number 415543.
Thank you very much. Also present today, we have Gordon Sacco, who will be observing the hearing. Mr. Townsend, can you please state your name and IMEI number for the record?
Timothy Townsend Jr., 243804.
Thank you. This is a public hearing in accordance to Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. If you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Sir, do you have any questions, and are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. I'm willing to proceed with the hearing.
Thank you very much. So this Public Act 23169 hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Timothy Townsend, inmate number 243804. Mr. Townsend is serving a sentence of 25 years flat with no probation to follow for murder and sale of hallucinogen narcotics. There is no victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan in place that has been reviewed and shows that he has completed the following programs, which include embracing fatherhood, domestic violence, beyond fear, and anger management. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the high range for recidivism. Mr. Townsend, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin at this time.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board of Pardons and Paroles for allowing me this privilege to be heard today. I stand before you humble and cognizant of my bad decisions that led me to this point. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincerest apologies and regrets to the victim for the family of the victim. I fully understand what I've taken from them, and it was never my intention for the victim to lose their life that night. I live with regret that I'll never be able to correct, and I can ensure that I no longer engage in the activities that contributed to this tragedy. I am truly sorry. I'm not here to make excuses or minimize my actions. I'm too old for that at this point. I stand here holding myself fully accountable now and for the rest of my life. I would also like to apologize to my community of New Haven and in the state of Connecticut. Please make no mistake about it. I don't take for granted this privilege of parole, and hopefully after this hearing, you'll see something in me at this moment to know that I'm capable and ready to be a productive member of society. I grew up in the Hill section of New Haven in the 80s, having a carefree childhood without worry about the poverty around me. As I got older, I noticed that our life was somewhat different than my friends. My mother was extremely popular, which transferred over to me and my older sister, becoming popular amongst our friends. My father cared and loved for my sister and myself despite him and my mother not being together. I remember every weekend going to my grandmother's house where my father lived and stayed for the weekend, having to pack my little suitcase and being excited for whatever my father had in store for me and my sister that weekend. This routine continued until 1988 when my father died. As a kid, I would hear rumors about my father's passing, and soon I began to notice the ugly parts of my society that I hadn't noticed, which was always right before my eyes the entire time. I realized that my community was infested with everything from drugs, violence, pimps, prostitutes, conmen, thieves, robbers, killers. My mother was in the center of it all, seeing heroin and running the after-hour nightclub out of our basement of our apartment. During that time, me and my sister had everything we needed and wanted. Then seemingly overnight, everything crashed to the devastating halt. My mom had to come to the very drugs that provided our stability. Now we were homeless, living in hotels, and I relied on school breakfast and lunch because dinner wasn't a regular anymore. I went from having nice clothes to being the dirtiest kid in the school. I remember being teased by my peers and traumatized that it stole my confidence and robbed me of my pride. My extended family began to notice what was happening, and my older cousin came to rescue my sister, but I was left to fend for myself. My mother was nowhere to be found at this point. I just roamed the streets, sleeping over my friends' houses, wherever I could, just doing whatever a 12-year-old could to survive at that time. Until a friend came to me in the summer of '92 and introduced me into a way of life that I will ultimately lead to my destruction and grief that changed my life and countless other lives directly and indirectly. Once I was introduced to selling weed, I began to get myself together somewhat. I bought myself some clothes, shoes, and underclothes. I was able to pay $25 a night for a motel room. I was able to feed myself. My youth and inexperience at responsibility regularly led to me losing my newfound stability, so to speak. I would eventually find my mother, and she would get an apartment for a few months until we were evicted again for non-payment of rent, and I would be on the streets again. This cycle lasted for years and was only broken when prison started to become my reality. At 16 years old, as I reflect on that time in my life, I realize now that my entire family seen I was in need but did nothing. During those years, I came to grips with the fact that I was on my own. So I manned up as much as a 12-year-old could. Most importantly though, I survived those times on my own. So I'm proud of myself for that. Instead, Instant gratification seemed necessary to me when basic human needs were immediate. During those years, I could always count on my mother's friend, Auntie Shell. She seemed to always step up whenever I could manage. She was struggling on her own with her own children. She always did what she could when she could. By the time my grandmother stepped in to take me and my sister, I had already been on the streets for years, and I had grown up accustomed to surviving on my own. Plus, I resented my family because they seen that I was only taken in after the Social Security check my mother was getting for me and my sister was able to be transferred over. My preteen years and early teen years in the streets were basically me being used by older, more street smart guys who had me out day and night hustling to survive. But to me, it was the only means I had to get my basic human needs. There was something positive that came out of my childhood struggles. It taught me hard work and independence. It also taught me not to be afraid to ask for help. I now have a passion for helping others, kids, and coming up that came up hard like me, and it feels like no one cares. I now find myself being the person I needed when I was younger for them. A lot of the times when I help it leads to my detriment, but I'm still not deterred because I know I'm doing the right thing, because as long as they know at least one person understands them and cares, they won't resort to the F the world mentality that ended up in my incarceration for the rest of my life like me. I would like to thank the McFadden family for having strength to hear me say what occurred 24 years ago today. I will first start off by saying I pray each and every night that the victim would be in heaven and find within his soul to forgive me for what I put him through, because the Lord knows I never intended any of this to happen. I never thought that one bad decision would lead to a domino effect, ending with the victim's life being lost, especially when my heart has never been motivated by malice. I wish I hadn't acted so rashly and let my emotions control me that night. I value thinking through situations logically, and I wish I had done that on that night. The night of the incident was different from any other nights I've ever experienced on the street. Earlier that night, I was robbed by someone wearing a mask. I felt it was suspicious because the victim was robbed. The victim wasn't robbed, even though he was standing right next to me when it was happening. I had no proof that he was involved. I was just in my feelings and emotional. Shortly after I was robbed, I left to get a firearm that I had stashed in an abandoned building in the area. I had the firearm since 1996. And I had never fired it prior to that night. And I rarely ever had it on me. Mr. McFadden and a younger female got into an argument about something that had nothing to do with me, but I interjected myself in their verbal altercation, using that opportunity to tell the victim how I felt about my suspicions with the robbery situation. When I got in his face, he pushed me back, feeling the firearm in my shoulder holster. Then stated, "Do what you gotta do. It's only a little bit of money." Before I could say anything, the round went for the gun in the holster. We tussled for a brief moment until I was able to secure the firearm. The victim continued to go for the firearm, and I remember pointing it at his feet and squeezing the trigger and hearing a loud boom. Then my ears rang. The victim still didn't stop. He grabbed the gun at that time and tried to take it out of my hands, but I resisted and squeezed and told him to stop and back up. But he wasn't hearing it and pushed me through the door of the window where we fell down the stairs. I fled the scene later and learned that he could succumb to his injuries. I prayed that night asking God to forgive me. God knew my intentions, and hurting Mr. McFadden wasn't my intention. I retrieved the firearm only to ensure my protection from another robber. I apologize for being so reckless and immature and careless that night. I never meant to do something like that. I'm not saying that just because I'm here in front of you today. This is my true feelings through decades of reflection and growth, and most importantly, remorse. To the victim's family, I want you to understand that there was no malice and intent in my actions. It was a situation where things got out of control, and I put myself in a situation where I felt that I had to defend myself. But if I never was selling drugs, or if I never got a gun, this would have never happened. But my reality is that it did, and I'm forever tormented with that reality. I've learned that the victim was just like me. This what hurts me so much. He was in the streets. I was told he was a real person and wanted to do more with his life. But unfortunately, limited by lack of opportunity and resources. Learning this hurt me to the core because it made me feel like I took someone similar to me who will understand the way I came up and what I've been through. I don't engage in this lifestyle anymore that I relied on when I was a kid. Since I've been incarcerated, I haven't sold drugs, used them, despite it being widely available. I'm a man now. I'm not a kid, and I stand and I stand for what is right. I learned the law through sheer determination. So I know what I put my mind to, I can accomplish. If I were given an opportunity, I'd be unstoppable, given my moral courage to do what's right despite consequences. So I'm thoroughly prepared to face life's temptations and be able to resist them and do what's positive. I'm aware that I've been in prison my entire life, and life on the other side of these razor wire fences is difficult, and I can't do everything on my own. I'm also aware that I'm fortunate to have a support network, but I'm not fortunate to have a support network, but I still refuse to resort to the life that I put myself to get myself here. I've been in this situation before. Back in the year 2000, I was released after completing my entire sentence. I wasn't given parole or a halfway house. I was just released, destitute and desperate. So I resorted to what has always provided me with the quick fix to my immediate needs. Which was housing, clothing, and other basic human needs. Even if that reality repeated in this situation, I won't allow it to set me up for failure like it did before. I've learned better and understand it may be hard, but I'll be just fine. When I look back at my life, I wonder if the parole board and the Department of Corrections knew that they were setting me up for failure. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone. This is just what goes through my mind now that I'm aware of what my life, of why my life went left, and so many other people's success and failures being determined by discretions instead of based on transitional needs and their risk of reoffending if they're left without resources. During my journey through the Department of Corrections, I've had a tremendously hard adjustment to the department style of control and punishment. I've always felt that the department style of rehabilitation was counterproductive to true change. I'd like to address some of my most serious DRs, if that's okay. In late 2005, I engaged into a fight with another inmate who punched me in my face because I wouldn't give him a loan. He was in his mid-40s and he was trying to bully me. I wasn't going to allow it, I admit that I handled the situation wrong during that time in the incident. I was accused of assault on DOC, but this assault never occurred. I tried to preserve the camera footage, but was told no in RHU, and I was beaten by officers while I was in the shower in retaliation for the alleged assault. I filed a lawsuit, but through my inexperience, I lost terribly. That's Townsend versus Savage. I later found out that the officer who claimed assault, was trying to engage in a workman compensation fraud. Then was later arrested for robbery. After that 2005 incident, I began to study the law relentlessly and studied the department's directives even harder, because it should have never been so easy to make false accusations that couldn't be uncovered. The following DRs are still on my record, even though they shouldn't, due to me winning lawsuits about DRs. In 2006 and 2007, I was accused of threats and interfering with safety and security and disobeying direct order. I was found not guilty of the threats, and the nurse came forward to expose the officer, but she was harassed until she resigned. The other two DRs were products of retaliation, which I proved, yet the DRs are still on my record. You can see Townsend versus Sterling, in which I was given an undisclosed settlement for those tickets, yet they're still on my record. In 2009, I had a fight with another inmate who threatened to kill me. I just reacted, which I should have just told staff, even with the problems that would have caused. I believe my reaction was wrong. I just didn't want to be another inmate that he stabbed, because he was extremely dangerous. I make no excuses and for my actions, because this environment that I make no excuses for my actions. From 2009 to 2013, I remained DR free. I was put in RHU 5 times for filing complaints against staff for threats, deprivation of basic human needs and medication, and later sexual harassment. In 2013, I was issued a fighting ticket, which was elevated to assault, even though he swung on me first. Prior to the fight, I quit my job in the textile factory because I didn't want to get in trouble, because I was DR free for over 4 years. The supervisors in the factory was the type to punish everyone for one person's behavior, and I didn't want to get in trouble, so I quit. And the inmate who swung on me thought I told on him, so when he came back from work, he swung to punch me in my face. I was later given assault because I won the fight. 2013, I was assigned to an illegally created disciplinary unit called the Ticket Block. I objected to my placement in the unit and submitted several complaints. Several other inmates lodged complaints as well, which led me to being put in RHU for impeding order, claiming I coerced other inmates to file grievances about the Ticket Block. I filed a habeas and managed to get the ticket overturned and later dismissed. I subsequently filed a lawsuit but lost at a jury trial, Townsend versus Merck. Even though the ticket was dismissed from my record, it still remains in my master file. In 2015, I was accused of flagrant disobedience to cover up the fact that I was assaulted by correction staff. In retrospect, I was lured into a main hallway where all the lights were shut off. Then I was attacked and injured. I reported the assault and was then accused of threats against staff. I pursued criminal charges, but was never interviewed by the state police. But the officer was disciplined internally. I sued and won, yet the DR remains on my record. That's Townsend versus Muckle. In 2015, I went back to Osborne and was immediately subjected to retaliation. I was housed in a cell with a paranoid schizophrenic that thought I was talking about him to other people. I explained to him that I didn't know him, but he was adamant that I seen him on the news and was talking about his child molestation case. I was confused and went to the lieutenant and asked to move to another cell, but was told I had to fight. The next day, my cellmate reported that I hit him, thinking that I will only get in trouble, but we were both put on RHU under investigation. I was later issued a ticket for assault, even though I never touched the guy. Ironically, they let him out of RHU and he came back to RHU the same day, claiming that somebody else had did something to him. I filed a habeas, you know what I mean, but agreed to withdraw it for an undisclosed settlement. But the assault still remains on my record. In 2016, I was sent back to Corrigan, where I suffered retaliation upon my entry into the facility. I was deprived of my basic human needs. My property was destroyed. I was issued tickets for complaining about it and managed to get the ticket dismissed. But it still remains in my master file. I filed a lawsuit about the incident, Townsend versus Sweden, and Townsend versus State of Connecticut Department of Corrections. I won both cases when given an undisclosed settlement. In 2016, I was sent to infield where I was subjected to threats for filing grievances. An officer told me if I filed another grievance, it would be my funeral. I immediately contacted the supervisor, but they did nothing. I filed a grievance, but was impeded from getting a resolution. The same officer that threatened me later accused me of threatening him, and I was thrown in RHU and found guilty. I filed a lawsuit and a habeas, which were both settled out of court for an undisclosed amount.
Mr. Townsend,
Yes,
so we're only at 2016. So
Yeah.
there's still a number of years that you
Yes.
might want to account for. But I'm wondering if this time, because we only have 90 minutes for this hearing, would better be spent hearing about your growth and what you took away from the programs and the vocational engagement that you had. I understand, and I think we all hear, your very sincere concerns about your treatment in the facility and your efforts to stand up for yourself and to hold DOC accountable. But what we're really trying to do today is look at whether you're now suitable for release to the community to finish your sentence under parole supervision. So, it's up to you how you want to spend the rest of this time. But I would suggest that we're probably at a point where it's time to turn it over to the questions that we've prepared based on the documents we've had to review. What are your thoughts?
okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. I really do appreciate the effort that you've gone to prepare the details that you're presenting before us today. And obviously your legal studies have served you well. So we're going to begin the questions with my colleague, Ms. Palmieri.
Okay.
Excuse me, could you just give a brief statement about what he's done since with his programs and his reentry plans? Maybe just finish that part of the statement.
Sure. If you could focus on the reentry plans, we've read all about the programs and they were enumerated, though there are several more that weren't accounted for.
When I return to society, I intend on getting my CDL license and creating a trucking logistic company. I mean, the open road seems appealing to me, especially after doing so much time in prison, in a prison cell. It's like the ultimate form of freedom. First, I'm going to form an LLC, my articles of organization, Then I'm going to get my EIN number and my Dun and Bradstreet number. Then I'm gonna open a business bank account. I mean, I'm gonna certify my business as a minority-owned business, and hopefully get some grants. One of the programs that I completed that was very profound in my development in the Department of Correction, and it kind of like, it validated the work that I was doing. That was good work. I did the Inside Out program when I was in Carl Robinson with Professor James Foreman Jr. And in that program, if you know about it, they have 12 college students and 12 inmates. And I went in the program, you know, because I'm embarrassed that I'm in prison for what I'm in prison for. I'm totally embarrassed, like, because I know this isn't me, but it's unfortunate that I'm here in this situation today. And I went in there under a pseudonym, and I just gave them a nickname, and I never told them my real name. And one day I got the courage to just tell them what my real name was, and I showed them an appeal that I had won on my own, the first appeal I ever won. So I showed them it, and they said, "This is you?" So I said, "Yeah, that's me." And they said, "We heard about you in law school." I said, "Yeah, how y'all hear about me in law school? I study prison law." He said, "We do all aspects of the law." And that moment right there kind of validated that I was doing a good thing. So I collaborated with James Foreman Jr., and he has a starter program for people who want to become lawyers. And I'm gonna engage in that program when I go home. But I still got to take a few college courses. The reason why I'm gonna start the CDL program is because so I can get some money to do online courses in college, so I can get to my bachelor's and then be able to pass the bar, hopefully. But that's my ultimate goal. But you know, I got to make some money first in order to do that. So.
Mhm. Well, it sounds like you also might have some savings.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Mr. Townsend.
Welcome.
Attorney Estrella, did you want to say anything?
I'll save my remarks for the summation. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Ms. Palmieri?
Mr. Townsend, were you able to kind of close your opening statement with anything with your release plan? I know you did. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
to my closing statement,
Yeah, other than, you know, what we were talking about with respect to your disciplinary report.
well, I definitely plan on getting some type of treatment when I go home. I need to see a therapist. I haven't had an opportunity to do that in here because I sued the mental health department here and I won, and they just, I don't know, I just been retaliated against because I was in a situation where, you know, they pointed guns to my head trying to get me to stop filing lawsuits and complaints. They held me at gunpoint for 3 hours and then took cocking the guns, loading them, pointing them to my head. I filed a lawsuit about it and I won the lawsuit. But when I went to go seek treatment for mental health, they just told me, yeah, get to the point. They didn't want to deal with me because they felt that I was exposing something internally within the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
That case is, I ended up settling that case for an undisclosed amount. That the name of that case is Townsend versus Muffle.
Okay. Well, you know, Mr. Townsend, just for informational purposes, it's very, very rare that we have a hearing like today where somebody has spent the majority of their life in prison and we do not make a recommendation that they participate in some level of mental health services. It's just vital, really just vital in terms of being able to reintegrate to the community. So much has changed since you were 20 years old.
I feel that it'll be like, it'll do me a disservice not to be able to speak to a therapist about all the things that I've been through, because it's like I've been indoctrinated to, when I'm doing something right, I've been indoctrinated to say that I was wrong. I was indoctrinated when I was a kid in the streets to think that what I was doing was okay. When I came to prison, when I started doing right, I was indoctrinated to say that it was wrong. So it's like I was always taught the opposite, even though I know that I was like, you know, just trying to do right, like just be a human being.
And believe me, we hear you. And like I said a few seconds ago, when you have been incarcerated for as long as you have, regardless of how things went, somebody that has a stellar record in the Department of Corrections still, we believe, still benefits from mental health services in the community upon release. You will need that type of support regardless of what has occurred through the Department of Corrections. And I will tell you also, Mr. Townsend, regardless of what happens today, because by my sort of calculations, you know, it would be a very short window that you would be on community supervision. I roughly 18 months to your end of sentence. And whether or not you participate in mental health services while you're on parole or not, that is also something that you can seek on your own. And I know 100% that it is available to you, whether you're on parole or not. Okay, so I would encourage you to do what's best for you with respect to that, regardless. So I did listen to your opening statement, and for the record, we've read all the documents that were submitted on behalf of you today for this hearing. There was a pre-sentence report that we reviewed, sentencing documents. Excuse me?
Oh no, I didn't. I couldn't really hear you because how the
I will speak up. Yeah, I know sometimes there's background noise, so please say if you cannot hear me. So anyways, we have reviewed all the documents associated with your case. And the purpose of today's hearing is we understand that you have had a lot of struggles and discrepancies with the Department of Corrections over the years. We are well aware of that. Really, what we want to focus in on today is not those legal issues, but what has prepared you to be in the community prior to your end of sentence? What makes you suitable for early release today? And your plan to be successful in the community, which you've already articulated very nicely and very thoughtfully in terms of how you see yourself back in the community. But for our purposes, you know, you are here today on a charge of murder. You did speak quite a bit about your remorse and your regret for your actions. When we talk about regret and feeling remorse, you mentioned early in your statement that you fully understand what you've taken from the family. What is it that you seem to understand that you've taken from that family?
When someone is taken from somebody's family, it's like a void is there. I understand that because I lost people to the streets. You know, my cousin was just recently murdered, you know, and I understand that, and I console my family about it. So I'm fully aware I lost friends to the street. I just never thought that I would be the person to do something like that. Or be in a situation where, you know, it happened because of me. That's a void that someone can't give back. I understand that wholeheartedly. He could have been somebody's rock. you know, that they relied on. I get it. I totally get it.
And I think you're right. There's a void that can never be filled. Parents that lose their children, you know, it's an overwhelming loss. And that feeling of what could have been. I think you mentioned that yourself. He was a person, what he had a life, what could have been, and because of your actions, that was not going to ever happen.
That's never lost sight of by me, ever.
Can you talk a little bit about how you see, what actions can you see that you have done over the years to try and make amends for your actions? And then also talk about how you plan to continue to make amends for the harm when you're released.
So what I committed myself to doing was helping the younger guys that were like me. You know, what I was being was the person that I needed when I was younger for them, to make sure that they felt like they was heard, letting them know that they don't have to lash out. It's a different way. Because a lot of the times we come from a street environment and our mentality is always instant gratification, only to come in a place like this and everything is hurry up and wait. And it becomes frustrating. And a lot of these young guys don't understand that. Like, listen, it takes time in order to get things right. Nothing happens overnight. And to show them, listen, this is the way, this is how you do it. Just take your time and look at these results that I got, and you can get the same results too. So this is what I have committed my incarceration to doing. It's unfortunate that I suffer consequences because of it, but I feel that it was necessary trouble. It was good trouble.
You know, we hear a lot of parole hearings where, you know, a lot of the older inmates, like you just talked about, mentor the younger inmates, sort of help them with the process, acclimating to this new community that they have found themselves in. It's not often that we hear retaliation to the person that's doing the mentoring. So when you talk about teaching the younger inmates to accept where they are, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, accept where they are, and come to terms with it and figure out how to work within the system. Why do you think that causes problems for you?
Because a lot of the times you have a situation where it's an ugly side of the department. It's great people in here. I've met some of the most awesome people that I've met in my life inside, staff-wise, inside the Department of Corrections. But I've met some of the most dangerous people that I've ever seen in my life. More dangerous, I feel, than some of the prisoners that's in here. And that's the part that, you know, that makes people relapse and turn into just ugly people, because they feel like the same thing that's going on in the street is going on in here. So I'm showing them this is the right way to go about it. You have to talk to the people that's going to help you in here. But a lot of the times, if you go to a staff member, it's like a double-edged sword.
So are you encouraging the younger inmates to seek out mentors by way of other inmates while you're in there? Okay.
And to don't be afraid to tell staff what's going on. But that's considered snitching in here. Like, it's a crazy thing. Like, people come to jail for not telling what happened in the situation, but then you come in here with staff and you say something and you're under their full and total control. Like, nobody in the outside world cares what happened to you. I file complaints to the court and then I get heard. But now, because I do that, it's like for instance, I was in a situation in the street and they told me, well, tell this, that, and the third. And, you know, me being young and dumb, I'm like, well, I ain't saying nothing. It's none of my business. Like, but I come here and then I turn a new leaf and I say, yo, listen, man, this is what's going on, X, Y, Z. And it's like, I'm the worst person and I get retaliated against because I say something. So that's why I said, if you're doing right, they make it seem like it's wrong.
Well,
Then I get a label.
you know, we often hear how important it is for the older inmates, the ones that have been at the facility for a while, to help to mentor the younger ones coming in, because they are young and dumb coming in, right? Impulsive, overreactive, and emotional. Right?
I was one of them, so I know.
You were one of them coming in. And with that said, we're not going to retry the case. You pled guilty. You admitted it. When you talked about having a gun you had that gun for a number of years and you'd never fired it before?
No.
Okay.
I rarely even had it on me. I probably, in all those years, I probably had it on me twice, maybe 3 times.
And you had to go and get it prior to this incident. And when you say you were robbed, what were you robbed of?
Money and drugs.
And the gun went off twice?
Yes. The first time I was just telling them, like, just stop trying to take the gun. Like, he was trying to snatch it out my hand.
So you shot it intentionally? Is that?
As it's aiming down, I just like shot at his feet. I didn't want to hurt him, like, or try to kill him. I just didn't want him to gain control of that firearm. I never was going to pull the firearm out. If he never felt it on me when he pushed me, then he would have never knew I had it on me. Because it wasn't for him.
Then you went to the police and made up this story about being robbed and defending yourself. I did read further in the reports that was something you regretted later on. Wish you had just.
Yeah. I should have had just said what happened, because at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like, it was my fault. I should have never got the gun. I introduced something into a situation that made it worse. Thinking that I'm doing something to protect myself, but really I'm harming myself and others.
And prior to committing this offense, you had been convicted previously of carrying a firearm and
Yes.
failure to appear in a violation of probation. And
Yes.
you said earlier in your opening statement that you felt like you were just put out there to fail, that you had no support. And when I look, I see that you had 2 years of probation. Did you reach out to your probation officer to talk about what was going on, to what you needed to live in the community?
Yes, I'll never forget that day, ever. My first day on probation. It was like, I went to probation and he gave me these rules. And he said, you can't be in no drug area. I said, I live in a crime infested drug area. I don't know anywhere where I'm gonna go. I said, you go in front of the courthouse, they sell drugs. They sell drugs everywhere. Where can I go? Like, I'm not fortunate to have anything, right? So my mother got an apartment somehow. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. I used to just sleep on the floor in the living room. You know? And he violated me that day, that first day, because I told him it's nowhere I have to go that isn't a crime area in New Haven. Where can I go? I don't have a car. I don't have a bike. I don't have anything. So he felt that I was being like combative.
All right, I'm going to ask you so that's your young self. So I'm going to ask your 44-year-old self right now. How do you think you might have handled that differently? And what do you think he really meant by that?
What he meant by don't be in no crime areas,
Yeah, what do you think the intention of that is?
he just didn't want me to get in no trouble. He didn't want me to get in no trouble and commit any crimes or be enticed by my old lifestyle by seeing it and wanting to engage in it.
So, you know, I just wanted to sort of gauge, to me, that's growth, right? That's maturity, that's being able to look at a bigger picture instead of zeroing in on, you know, what you can't do, but rather what you can do.
Yes.
And
I
when you were on probation for carrying a firearm, what were you thinking when you picked up another firearm?
Oh, that firearm right there, I just stumbled upon by chance. I had stumbled on it by chance. We was going through the backyards because the cops had came through and we jumped the gate so they wouldn't harass us. And when we was going through the backyard, it was by the trash can. And so my boy was like, yo, look. I was like, oh, and I just grabbed it. Like just, I don't know, being stupid.
I mean, you could have left it there. You
I
could
know.
have called, you could have called an adult to come and get it.
Unfortunately, that wasn't my mentality back then.
Moving on a little bit, let's talk about some of the programs that you've done. I mean, despite having the disciplinary reports, you have gotten yourself into some programming that through your own discussions, you feel that have kind of changed how you think about things. And I have, you recently completed the Tier 2 program.
Yes.
You completed domestic violence program and embracing fatherhood, anger management.
Yes.
Let's talk about anger management for a minute. Can you tell me why you think that is an important program to participate in?
It's an important because it teaches you how to control your anger, measure it, how to diffuse situations. You know, I still use a lot of the things that they taught me today. Like one of the things in there, my reputation is formed to me of others. My character is the person that people see right before them. So I can't be worrying about how people view me. How they view my reputation. I gotta let them see who I truly am. Like who I show you who I am before you today, despite my reputation that's on paper.
And have you said you've been able to use some of the principles and techniques that you've learned through anger management?
Yes. I haven't had a fight 10 years almost.
Okay, we do have that. Do you feel like you have improved in your behavior? You feel as though your behavior, you're a little more in control of your emotions? Is that what you're saying?
I'm fully in control of my emotions. Everything I do now, anything aggressive that I do is on paper. I aggressively write about the things that happen to me. Like, for instance, I was sent to Corrigan from Cheshire. And because of my writings, they beat me bad. I just got beat. They destroyed me. And then gave me a ticket and then threw it out and said, like, basically no harm, no foul, like basically. They saying they still investigating now, they're gonna discipline the officers, but that's the second time that happened to me in that facility. For the same thing though, writing. I'm not threatening nobody in my writing. I'm just saying what they're doing to me there. Like, this is what you're doing to me and why. Could you please just leave me alone, basically? But they beat me into submission like I was just nothing. But when I say I called the police several times since I've been in prison, right? The first time the police came, they said, what's going on the street? Who's out there doing this? I said, I've been in prison 10 years. Like, I don't know nothing about the street. And the
So,
second time,
So, Mr. Townsend, I'm going to redirect you, and not that I don't appreciate, all the struggles that you've had. I think, as I said, and Chairperson Turner said, we hear that you have all these struggles. Our time today is somewhat limited, and we do want to really talk about you rather than the Department of Corrections. We want to talk about your progress. So you have taken a lot of programs. I'm happy to hear what you've learned from the anger management program. I like the fact that you see your reputation as something that you can look out for and feel like you can be who you are. I saw that you took the Tier 2 program. Can you tell me, of all the programs that you've done, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment?
My biggest accomplishment within the Department of Corrections has to be my determination in learning the law. I love it. I love it. There's nothing I love more than just reading case law, learning about it. It's like a puzzle that you put together. Like, it's a beautiful, that's something that I'm passionate about. I just love it. I did that on my own volition, and it's just something that I just gravitated towards, learned about, and then was kind of good at it.
Mm-hmm. Did you surprise yourself with how interesting you found it and how versed you became with it?
Sure. I just I learned the criminal aspect and I learned the civil aspect. It just was something that I buckled down, even though this how deep I got into it, right? I would do my 5 prayers a day. And in between that time that I'm praying, I wouldn't even come off a rec. I'd come off a rec to take my shower. And this at the time we was getting 22 and 2. And I wouldn't even come off a rec. I'd just be in there studying all day long. All day long.
Sounds to me when you put your mind to something, you stick to it. As you said.
I never knew. I knew that I was good at reading and writing when I was in the 4th grade because I won a statewide essay contest. But I came back to that love of it, and here I discovered it again. And that was something that it was profound to me. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword. So, but it's a beautiful thing. But another program that I actually liked was the SOS program. It was a few older inmates that had been in jail before I came in, and they created their own program. And it was a way to show us how to turn a negative into a positive. So the negative ways that we used to hustle out there to get money, it was positive ways to do it. So basically, instead of selling weed, we could sell T-shirts. Instead of, and that's still a suit someone's yearn to like not work for nobody if they had an entrepreneurial spirit, and they'll be able to do it in a more positive way.
How long was that program?
8 weeks.
Okay. How long ago did you do that program?
2017, I think.
So not that long ago. Certainly has stuck with you. So when we talk about, I want to move forward to talk about your release plan. So your release plan is to release to a halfway house.
Yes.
And you feel by going to a halfway house that you'll get the support that you need and the resources?
Definitely, because I have nothing. I have no resources. Like to the point where if I was to be let out, I don't have nowhere to go.
You have nowhere. Well, the halfway house will provide you with housing, provide you with opportunities to go out and look for work, get those general tools that you need, IDs, Social Security cards, things like that. And then we already talked about mental health services. And then you said you want to go to school for CDL. Other than your aunt is still available for support in the community?
Yeah, she's around.
She's around?
Yeah.
Okay. And you talked about going someplace other than New Haven to kind of not land back where you were before.
Definitely. Most definitely.
When you think about being back in the community, do you think about what will be difficult for you? What will be some of the difficulties with the transition?
The most anxiety I go through is that I'm not gonna have enough time in the halfway house to be able to acquire enough resources in order to like be stable, because for everything I keep hearing is your rent is so high, they want 2 months security and in a month, the first month's rent. And I'm like, if I'm only in a halfway house for, I don't know how long it'll take, like 6 months or whatever. And however long it takes me to get a job, I'm thinking to myself, like, what if they only let me be in the halfway house for 4 months or 5 months and I don't stack enough money in order to do this stuff? Now I'm thinking to myself, like, what the heck? I'm gonna be like, it might be wintertime and I'm on the street. Like, what am I doing?
Okay. And what have you done when you think about that? What are you planning? How are you planning to manage that? Because that could happen.
Yeah, I try to use my networks to say, yo, if I need a place to crash, could you help me? But I don't have many like people that I can count on in that way. So it's unfortunate, but sometimes this is people's reality and it's mine.
It's a very strong reality for many people, not just for you. Have you prepared a budget? Have you thought about what types of jobs might be available to you right away?
Yeah, I did. I thought about a couple of jobs that I know that when people usually go home to halfway houses, they get those jobs. So that's the
What
ones
kind
I'm
of
gonna apply for initially. They said one was like Town Fair Tire, CNS out there by Hartford, Windsor area. I seen one by Norwich when they had the jobs app on the tablet. I seen one in Norwich at US Foods, but they wanted a driver or a driver's helper. So when I was home, that's what I used to do. I was in trucking. So I gravitated towards that and I wrote that down to possibly apply for that job as well. And I have somebody look into it.
You know, I want to be very clear that, you know, an early release, we will certainly include a halfway house to help you. But a lot of what needs to happen is going to be your initiative, right? It's going to be you out looking for employment, you out, you know, trying to find resources and things that will help you long beyond probation and parole, right? Beyond what the services of the criminal justice system can provide. A lot, like I said, whether you get parole today or not, you know, it's a very short window.
I'm highly motivated and I'm studious enough to look into the things that I need to make it for myself, because so I know I have to buckle down and get things done for myself. Like, but one thing that'll would never occur, ever, is I'll go back to the lifestyle I once lived. Never. It'll never happen. If that was the case, I would have been wanted to hear.
All right. And my thoughts to you are, you're studious and motivated, but are you humble enough? Sometimes you have to humble yourself to kind of take those jobs that you think you're better than, that you don't want. And that trips
I can never be better than
up.
money. I can never be better than money and stability. If that money is going to buy stability, as long as it's legal, I'm for it.
All right, Mr. Townsend, is there anything else that we should be talking about today?
I would just like to thank the board for hearing me out. I know I get long-winded at times. I've been told that before, so this was nothing really new. But thank you.
You're welcome. We want to make sure that we get through the full process. So we appreciate you understanding. All right. Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Thank you. So, Mr. Townsend, in your opening statement, you asserted that you want and are ready to become a productive member of society. And I'd ask you to define what that means to you.
To live and remain free, to work and contribute my part to society, you know, and to help the people that I want to help gain my law degree so I can help even more people.
So
I have a
that
plan.
your plan to give back for the harm that you caused, both selling drugs and taking a life, is through supporting people with legal recourse when they have the need. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, because in my eyes, that's where people are the most desperate. Like, most people don't realize that their lifestyle is tragic until they get in trouble. And that's the point right there, as an officer of the court, that a person can step in and really figure things out for a person. And I think that I'll be great at that because I've been through a lot, and I know a couple of people who left prison and passed the bar and became attorneys. I talk to some of them sometimes. So it's attainable. It's not something that isn't able for me to obtain as a person just coming from prison. It's not far-fetched.
No, of course not. So I encourage you to think expansively about what a productive member of society looks like. You already talked about getting your LLC and your EIN. So that's already being law-abiding, that you're going to do things through the proper channels, make sure you establish your businesses and you pay taxes, that you register to vote when you're eligible, that you, look to connect with agencies that are already helping people in the community and connect to those agencies and add to the good that they're doing out there. You don't have to recreate the wheel. There's a lot out there that's going well. So, coming into today, one of the things that came to mind looking at, in large part your disciplinary, but also your struggles out in the community, was the word defiance. And not in a terribly positive way. But what I'm altering that thinking about you as I listened to you and I heard your answers to my colleagues' questions, I would amend that to be more like determination. I see you as a bit of a crusader, but understand, you're not alone in your crusade. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You don't have to be carrying a torch by yourself. There's a lot of people who share your vision and your mission, and you just need to find them and connect with them and do good with your determination. So my last question to you is, you have had some very souring experiences with the institution of DOC, with individuals in DOC. I know you talked about a lot of the outstanding people. So if you're granted today, you'll be assigned a parole officer. What is the approach and the mindset that you're going to take to supervision?
I'm gonna rely on my parole officer to the fullest. They might get tired of me because I'm gonna be looking for guidance and the resources that they can provide me with or link me to. I'm coming like a fish out of water.
Right. And you've got
a
short period to maximize the benefit that parole can play in your transition. And I'm encouraged to hear that you have a positive mindset, that you understand this person is part of your support system, somebody that can guide you, and they want you to be successful. So work with them, especially if you're starting to worry or feel stressed. Talk to them before you make decisions that, could go south. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Rodriguez. any
Thank you,
questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have any questions. My colleagues have asked quite a few questions for me already, that satisfy me already. But I just want to say thank you so much for your statement today and for what you shared with us today. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
This time, the attorneys will be afforded the opportunity to make a statement during this hearing. We will begin with State's Attorney Doyle. So Attorney Doyle, do you wish to make any statements?
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I thought I went second, but I will make my comments right now. Thank you very much. I
Okay,
do
thank
want to
you.
point out just a couple things that I heard this morning. I think there's some numbers or some dates or some factors that I want to point out. I think it was pointed out this morning, and I think it was pointed out by Mr. Townsend himself, that as I prepared for this hearing, I realized this is scheduled 24 years to the day. I don't know if anybody, I don't think anybody did that by design. I think it just happened, but I think it's very, I don't know, just ironic. Okay, it just happened.
Noteworthy.
Yes, noteworthy. Thank you. And so, 24 years of today, a young New Haven man was killed by the defendant. And the defendant was subsequently arrested. This homicide happened October 30th of the year 2000. Mr. Townsend was arrested via an arrest warrant on April 2nd, 2001. He's been in custody since then. He entered a guilty plea on May 23rd, 2002, and was formally sentenced on August 2nd, 2002. I think it's important to note that during the time period, he was awaiting trial. He was about to start trial. He was in the middle of jury selection when a decision was made by Mr. Townsend to enter a guilty plea pursuant to the Alford Doctrine. And I think the board knows what that is, but that's Mr. Townsend essentially indicating, I'm looking at trial, and after talking to his attorney and getting some advice, making the decision that balancing the equities, it might be a better opportunity to plead guilty and getting a certain agreed upon sentence, in this case, a 25-year mandatory minimum, as opposed to what the future may or may not bring, which could have been a guilty verdict and facing more serious charges and a more serious penalty, or even quite possibly a not guilty verdict. But those are the things that happen with trial in very serious cases, such as murder. But after he entered the guilty plea pursuant to the Alford Doctrine, as the transcripts reflect, Mr. Townsend raised issues with his plea. Then he subsequently raised issues between the plea and sentencing. He sought to withdraw his plea, and that was denied by Judge Fasano back in 2002. Then I'm not going to belabor all of these cases where he sued the Department of Corrections or made complaints about them. By my count, there's at least 18 of them. But there's some other matters that Mr. Townsend, in his effort to study the law, has also brought up. So one of the things that he did initially, too, was he made a complaint that he brought up a case that went up to the habeas court, subsequently went up to the appellate court, where he was claiming that his attorney was ineffective in not representing him properly, where Mr. Thompson was indicating his lawyer gave him bad advice or was ineffective, and that he actually, in fact, wanted to go to trial. That was subsequently denied. His attorney that represented him at this hearing, at this trial, still actually practices today and is here and is I just saw him this morning, he's here this morning, and he's an excellent attorney. But Mr. Townsend was making the claims that his lawyer was ineffective, gave him bad advice, and that he wanted to withdraw his plea. Putting aside all the DOC complaints, of which I disagree with Mr. Townsend, most of what I observed here were complaints where he had filed lawsuits or appeals or certain state and federal actions against correctional officials. And most of them were found to have been, at least every one that I found, the 17 that I found, other than one that was referred back for further proceedings, they were all denied or dismissed as essentially frivolous, or denied as being no bounding in the law, or no equities could be found in the law for Mr. Townsend was claiming. Whether he had some kind of an agreement after with the Department of Corrections, I don't know. But I do look as additional numbers, and I'll defer to the board. I've heard everything from 40 tickets to 80 tickets to back to 82 tickets. By my count, I see 82 disciplinary tickets, 2 of them within the last year. I see 15 lawsuits that he has filed. And I've also noted that at the time of this murder, he had, and Chairperson Palmieri pointed this out, he had already had a prior weapon conviction, already been sentenced to prison, already been on probation. So he basically came home as a young man knowing What should I not do of all the dumb, stupid, horrible criminal things to do, but pick up a gun and carry around a gun? So he had a gun, but he convicted or something. Not even like you don't know that you shouldn't have a gun or shouldn't carry a gun. You already went to prison for carrying a gun. And so you go back out there and you engage in the same activity of carrying a gun again. And then a young man, a resident of the city of New Haven, was killed. He doesn't have any family. He didn't have any family back then. I'm here to speak on his behalf because his parents were deceased at the time that this case was proceeding through. He had a god sister, so to speak. We attempted to locate her and find her. We can't locate her. And he did have a sister that was living out of state at the time. But a New Haven resident was killed by the defendant, who had previously been on probation and previously been in custody for a weapon offense. I think, as the board points out, at some point in the next 18 months, 2 years, whether you grant this parole or not today, he is going to be out. He's going to be on the street. But what I'm concerned about is that, as the state's attorney, is I see an individual who has had issues with authority from everything from police systems, Department of Corrections systems, probation, parole, and then along the way, in addition to making complaints about attorneys, then going through and making complaints about a variety of things that what corrections did. But in addition, 2 years ago, there was a case that he filed in which it was his view, and it turned out to be correct because of the statute, that when he was getting released, that he would, the claim was that he shouldn't have to comply with the gun registry offender, dangerous offender registry for firearms. And that part is true because that statute was enacted after he was convicted. Okay. So it turns out to not be true. But it wasn't a situation where Mr. Townsend was proclaiming at that time that I should just not have to comply with this registry. What his claim is recently, is in the last 5 years, is that my initial guilty plea should be vacated and withdrawn because my due process rights were violated because I wasn't advised of this registry, which turns out to not be true. He doesn't have to comply with the registry. But it wasn't like a situation where saying just to absolve me of having to comply with the registry. Let me still go back and withdraw my plea because I shouldn't have been convicted and I shouldn't have this conviction and I should be let out. So I am concerned about the individual that sits here before here with the history that he has. I'm concerned about when I look at the the decision information summary, that it noted that he high risk for recidivism, prior behavior while he was incarcerated, and up until today, no acceptance of responsibility for the behavior, the action that led to a death of a New Haven individual. The board is going to do what the board is going to do. Mr. Townsend, whatever happens to you, I wish you luck. I think at some point, if you're on probation or parole, you're probably going to be with 50 to 60 probationers or parolees that are going to be directed to come to a Project Safe Neighborhoods meeting, to a Project Longevity meeting, like one we had in New Haven last night, where we address offenders and inform them of the opportunities, like the board has said, that are out there. But in my view, and it's not my decision, I think you need to adjust your viewpoint of the world when you're stepping out there, because this, let's just say, reluctance to follow any directions or behavior there are just going to either get you in additional trouble when you are released. I hope that I'm wrong, but that'll be up to you to prove so. Thank you to the board for hearing me today.
Thank you, Attorney Doyle. At this time, Attorney Estrella, do you have any final remarks you'd like to make?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So good morning. Again, my name is Hope Estrella. I'm a Deputy Assistant Public Defender for the Waterbury Legal Services Unit. I want to thank the board for taking the time to listen to what Tim has said today and for their consideration. There's no getting past here that a terrible loss occurred. And, you know, I disagree with what Attorney Doyle said. I do believe that Mr. Townsend has taken responsibility for this crime. The issues with the legal proceedings had to do more so with the actual sentence and the actual determination of whether this was considered a murder or a manslaughter in light of the legal definitions of those. But Tim recognizes that he took a life, and he's recognized that since the beginning. It was never something that he took lightly. We've had many conversations about this, and he has always expressed remorse. More so than anyone, a lot of my clients, he has taken responsibility and acceptance and really thought deeply about what pain he has caused both the victim's family as well as the community of New Haven. Getting past that today, I think that Tim is in a unique situation, and that is because he will be released in 18 months, and 18 months is a short period of time. His eligibility for parole came slightly later than most people. He, only found out a short time ago that he was eligible for parole, but he has taken advantage of this, and he is asking for your help. And he understands that there's a lot of challenges ahead of him that he's going to have to face. He's talked about his challenges with housing and with jobs, and he and I have had many conversations about this as well. He understands that he needs trauma treatment. I believe that he probably has some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder. Obviously I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed physician in any way, but I do believe that he needs some sort of trauma treatment, not just for his childhood or his incarceration, but also for things that have happened, since he's been in jail in general. He's been through a lot. But, he has a plan in place. He wants to become a productive member of society. He has had a job before, although for a short period of time when he was released, when he was 19, and he did hold that job for a couple of months. He wants to do work in trucking. He wants to take classes. He has such a passion for the law. I'm in awe, honestly, of a lot of things that he has done. I mean, doing an appeal pro se in front of the Appellate Court of Connecticut is not an easy task. And he did that research entirely himself. He was appointed an attorney at one point, and that attorney had filed an Andrews brief and left the case. And so Tim took up the mantle and proceeded ahead because he does have a strong sense of what's right and wrong, and he understands what his legal rights are. He's also found faith in Islam. He did mention that he does pray 5 times a day. He often prays for forgiveness for this crime, and I think that's important as well to mention in this case. Tim is forever burdened by what's happened here. Admittedly, he doesn't have a strong community, although I did speak with his Aunt Michelle last night. She's working today. She does work in the New Haven hospital system, and so she wasn't able to get the day off, but she's supporting him no matter what he's going through. And although she can't support him financially in many ways, she will support him through her support, her emotions, her ability to be there for him, to answer phone calls. I just want to emphasize that Tim is going to be released shortly. And the question before this board is whether he'll be released with support from parole or whether he will be released without the support from parole. And I think that's something that will make a big difference in his life and his outcome. He's been incarcerated for 23 and a half years. Things have changed dramatically since when he originally went into jail. He's never owned a cell phone. He doesn't have a laptop. I don't think he's ever watched a Netflix show or something like that. And, the world is very different. He's going to need help. And I believe that the best opportunity for him to get this help is through the parole board. He is eligible for community release. He did find that out yesterday or 2 days ago. He's completed programming. He wants to go into therapy and take accountability for what's happened. It hasn't been an easy process for him. And I think we can all acknowledge here that he's had some stumbles along the road, and he's admitted to those stumbles and he's taken responsibility for them. He's also someone that's never given up. And I think that when I first met him, it was what struck me about him the most. He has the biggest passion for the law. He has the biggest passion for doing what's right and wrong. And, as a public defender, we often take up the same mantle that he is, where we're trying to fight for the rights of people who are incarcerated. And I think that he's on the right path. Again, I want to thank the board for taking this time. And I'm grateful that he's had this opportunity to speak with you and to write out what has happened in his life. I think that it's been healing for him, no matter what the outcome is. And I'm glad that he was able to participate in this. So thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Estrella, and I'll turn it back over to the board.
Okay. At this time, we're going to discuss your case, Mr. Townsend. So just give us a few minutes, please. Ms. Palmieri, you began.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. So with Mr. Townsend, we had a lot of information provided to us. I think what jumped out for us all was those number of disciplinary reports.
Which is 47.
Yeah.
And recent.
During this, they're recent. And during this period of incarceration, he has struggled all along. I think that's clear. I have no doubt in my mind that, his age at the time of the offense, his chaotic upbringing, his being thrust into the streets at an early age, had a lot of bearing on how he ends up where he is today. And as a young individual, we know that there's impulsivity, compulsiveness, it's just, and emotions that just run wild, and assist in making those poor decisions. I take some positive when I asked, because Mr. Townsend has gone on and said he needs support, he needs support, he needs support. And I did take some sense of aha when I asked him about being on probation, and he said they told him that first statement to stay out of a drug infested area, and he's gotten to a little contentious argument, sounds like, with the probation officer at the time. But now he can see what the intention of the probation officer was, to avoid those situations, to, you can't tell people that they're not going to be able to live in these situations, but you cannot engage in them. You cannot participate. You can walk away. I think as an adult, go ahead.
And not to cut you off, but I think that his reaction to what he heard from the probation officer made sense for who he was at the time.
Exactly.
And the idea that this is what he knows, and if you're telling me to stay out of these areas, what then do I do? So instead of it being a problem-solving exercise, it got into, probably somewhat of a panic situation for him, because, we all gravitate towards the familiar.
Absolutely. And at the age of 20, he knows nothing other than that other world in which he grew up in and how to survive in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that because we talked a lot about Mr. Townsend throughout the reports. He wants parole. He needs parole. He needs the support in the community. But I remind Mr. Townsend that with parole comes somebody that's in your business, somebody that is telling you, you have to ask permission to leave the state of Connecticut. You have to go to this program, or you can't be with that person. Or
report at this time.
Right, I'm coming to see you. You need a place to live, or you can't live there because of whatever reason. So I say that because I think there's a balance there. Mm-hmm. And I'm hopeful that Mr. Townsend at the age of 44 will appreciate that parole is there to provide him with the best opportunities for success.
And that's why I asked him what his mindset was going to be in approaching parole, because so many people think of it as a measure of accountability and don't appreciate the support that's being offered in the form of parole supervision.
And I do think that Mr. Townsend is remorseful. I think he understands or tries to have the best understanding possible of the loss to the family and what they'll never get back again. I don't think there's any way to address the disciplinary reports. They are on his record. Regardless of how he sees they are what we have to look at. However, I do think that Mr. Townsend has matured, has a reasonable release plan that's achievable. I think that he has, in his own way, tried to live as best he could in the Department of Corrections and educate himself and learn from the various programs that he's participated in. I agree with Attorney Doyle in that, there will be requirements like Project Longevity, Project Safe Neighborhood, that he'll need to attend that will, if he chooses, provide him with opportunities to engage with programs that will help him in the community. I also think that based on the charges, based on the amount of time that Mr. Townsend has been incarcerated, it would be almost negligent on our part to not provide some level of community supervision. And it's a flat sentence, so there is no parole or probation to follow this. For public safety reasons and for Mr. Townsend's greatest opportunity for success, I think that parole is the most reasonable disposition to this case. So I would be in favor of granting his discretionary parole today.
Thank you, Ms. Palmieri. I also feel that in the interest of public safety, someone to go out after such a lengthy period of incarceration, though he has many tools, it's the fundamentals of survival that you're looking for to create the stability to achieve the goals and pursue the dreams that one has. And I think without the fundamentals, there can be regression into what is known, what is familiar, what is easy. And with the oversight and the provision of housing, we get him off on the right foot, and he has this transition period with support as he reintegrates.
Madam Chair, not to belabor the point or keep to respond with the same,
Yes,
with the same
thank
thing.
you.
I mean, I agree, but I mean, I did have concerns about his tickets, especially the most recent ones. But the way he presented today, I mean, in terms of his age, the time of his offense, the nature of the offense, the fact that he's taken the programming and utilized the programming, and I think it's the right. I think it's the right way to go with this.
So for conditions, I have halfway house, mental health evaluation and treatment is deemed necessary, no contact with co-defendant Jackie Brown, and a general no contact with Crystal Castro. Did you have anything to add?
And no contact with the victim's family?
Well, as Attorney Doyle pointed out, there is, we can't begin to name it. So
Yes.
I removed that. Did you have anything else to add?
I do not.
I don't think else.
Okay. All right, Mr. Townsend. In the matter of Timothy Townsend Jr., inmate number 243804, there is a motion to grant parole on or after today's date of October 30th, 2024, with the following conditions for your supervision: halfway house placement, mental health evaluation and treatment is deemed necessary, no contact with co-defendant Jackie Brown, and a general no contact with Crystal Castro. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you.
We
Thank you
wish
so
you much
much.
success.
Thank you. This concludes the hearing. This concludes the public act 23-169 hearing for Timothy Townsend, May 243804. It is 10:31.
Thank you to the board. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's remember, we're only talking about like an 18-month difference. This isn't like he's back in life and they're paroling him all these years. It's 18-month different. And with that being said, I say, yeah, you should parole because you got to give him some extra chance to succeed. You got to give him the halfway house. You got to give him whatever support. Just for that reason, I would say, okay, let's hope. But sadly, I don't think he's got a shot. And I'm saying this based off of seeing over 2,000 parole hearings, seeing hundreds of revocation hearings, knowing what the halfway house situation is going to be like, and looking at his record. He's not like an agreeable personality. He's they use the word defiant. I use the word, he views himself as the victim. Well, they use the word crusader, which is just crazy to me, because that's not what I see. He's filed like how many frivolous lawsuits? And you might say, well, that's good. At least, he's fighting back. He's doing something positive. But we have seen hearings. We saw a hearing out of Illinois where the man, similar situation, except he's like 15 when he's been locked up in prison. He actually studied and passed the bar and got accepted into law school. Now to his credit, the first man in DOC history to do something like that. But he did it. That's just an example of seeing when you see so many parole hearings, you have different bars to set it to. It is rare to see someone who has that many write-ups, and 2 in the past year. If you are going to have 2 write-ups when you know that you're coming up for a parole hearing and there is one thing you got to do, which is not get a write-up. If you really want to get paroled in 18 months and you still get a write-up, then he shows up here and he spends the first 20-something minutes up to the year 2015. He has to get cut off. Who knows how much longer it would have gone. You would think his attorney would have said something, would have looked at a stack of papers and said, no, don't take this approach. And I don't know how involved these attorneys are. Maybe she she only met him this morning. Maybe she didn't consult him, or maybe he said, no, I'm going to do what I want, which I could see happening because he's it's just not looking good. And there's a good, if I was a betting man, I sadly, I think we'd see him soon. Imagine him succeeding in a halfway house full of all those people who are drinking the Connecticut water, and for him to all of a sudden not get in trouble with them, and the people managing the halfway house, I think, is probably tougher than prison. And I mean, I've had people in Connecticut write me and tell me that the halfway house is a messy place to be in. And he doesn't seem to have created any relationships except for one relationship, but they're that you know, we have seen people who they you know, he knew he was getting out in 25 years. You know, this bill only bought him like 18 months, but he knew this act that was passed, by the way, which is just crazy. Like, again, act number 23169. If you're under the age of 21, now you can get parole. Wow. Like, I'll predict that we're going to see certain states passing acts where if you're under the age of 26, right? Because we already see attorneys saying the brain doesn't fully mature until the age of 26, and soon they'll be age 50, whatever. But we'll probably see acts passed soon where, well, they murdered someone at 25, but his brain wasn't fully, you know, mature. And I know that he has 8 prior felonies, but he should get a parole and his record expunged. Now, he can't get his record expunged. The record expungement is for only certain crimes, but the act also had that stuff baked in. And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I still cannot believe that if you Google this act, it's not in the news. It really feels like it was just snuck through. I thought it was a horrible parole hearing. I don't believe his story about what happened with the gun. I just don't, from his personality. And if you can imagine how much, you know, I felt it from this room, and he's aged 24 years since the crime. What do you think? You think that he was really the victim? The guy pushed me and he was grabbing for my gun. And I think that he's like, you robbed me. I know you robbed me and you're going to pay. Like, that's the way I envision. I'm just speculating. And and what's crazy, we don't have any, we have appeals on the idea that he said that his attorney, you know, did a disservice to him, but in those appeals, we don't have details of his crime. But from what I heard him say, it was like someone robbed him and the guy next to him wasn't nervous, so we assumed he was involved. And it's like, so you're just making assumptions, and it's like, imagine if he really wasn't involved. Man, I thought it was a horrible hearing. The DA, you know, the DAs are going to show up to these things, I guess, because of this certain act. And I think he really laid down, you know, it was kind of like a mic drop, just laying it down with all the tickets and all the frivolous lawsuits. And he basically like said, you know, like the board's like, oh, you're a crusader. And he's like, all these lawsuits were frivolous. They were like jokes, and the only one that he won was about being, which, if you can imagine, he's already thinking, I don't want to be in the 5-year dangerous weapon whatever list. And he's like, and he only won that one because of a technicality, not because of the argument he made. He didn't even make the proper argument for the one appeal that he won. And then he has all these lawsuits which he's claiming that they're settled out, and he even claims that the DOC had him in the corner and they're loading and unloading guns, the correction officer in front of him, because of all of his lawsuits. And it might be true. Look, I do believe things like that happen, but you know, he viewing yourself as the victim, someone who had spent all this time in prison, someone who then you'd been spent in prison, you got released. He blames the DOC for releasing him, like saying, what, they thought that they would release me and that they would be okay. Like, and yeah, that's, you know what, it's true. I have heard plenty of people say, wow, the biggest problem that I had was not getting a long enough prison sentence. I've heard plenty of people on YouTube say things like that. But he's blaming them. They released me with nothing, and what did they expect? Of course I was going to go and murder someone. But it's again, it's the outlook, it's the approach, it's the thought. He's the victim. He murdered someone. He rob someone of their life, and he's somehow the victim, and he has all these write-ups, and he's in the it's the mindset has to change. He should, and his plan, even when he's out, is it's not thought out. You would think, it's I'm gonna get an LLC and an EIN. It's like, well, first of all, it's just tell me I'm wrong. I have had multiple LLCs in multiple different states, and an LLC by default, it comes with a taxpayer ID or EIN. It would be like saying I'm going to get a driver's license with a driver's license ID, and then the parole board member said it too. So it's like redundant. It's just a weird thing to say. And anyways, also I would always, I'm not an attorney, but I wouldn't recommend the first thing you do. I'm going to start a business and get an LLC. I would actually say no. I would say, it's expensive to get an LLC, and then you have to do a filing every year. And then if you don't do something right, these cities, I have gotten penalties in insane amount of dollars because of this or because of that. They don't care who you are, and then you have to fight them, and it would stress someone out. And I would just say, just go and get on the floor and figure something out and start making money. You worry about the LLC later. Again, I'm not an attorney. Don't take my advice for anything, but that's always the last thing I'd worry about. And anyways, whatever. And Philip, Mandoo, how dare you? You don't know his situation. How can you talk on this? No, I haven't been in his situation, but I have recorded probably close to 2,000 parole hearings. I probably watched 5,000 or 6,000 because I only record a certain percentage of them. So, find someone who's seen 5,000 parole hearings, and you can ask their opinion on things, or you can ask someone who's been locked up. Maybe they have a better opinion. Anyways, that's my little rant. I think he should get paroled. I don't think he's going to be successful, not with this attitude and not with his plans. But I hope, I would love for him to prove me wrong. But if he does come back at a revocation hearing, we will cover it here. And we have sadly covered many, 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 many revocation hearings for those that get paroled, that have much better parole interviews, much better prison records. So with that, I'll let you go.
But in my view, and it's not my decision, I think you need to adjust your viewpoint of the world when you're stepping out there, because this, let's just say, reluctance to follow any directions or behavior there are just going to either get you in additional trouble when you are released. I hope that I'm wrong, but that'll be up to you to prove so. Thank you to the board for having me today.